can you win every qualifying race and that person does not win a medal? Get real. I hate it.
That's the nature of the modern Olympics. I don't agree with it. I think it's really devalued the gold medal.
South American debut for SailGP this weekend.
So we're going to go into a light wind weekend. Compression on the shore, current ripping off that cone island. It's going to be a very, very tricky racecourse. A world of snakes and ladders if you're in that bottom six and you come away as one of the two teams that will score 0 points, and you have got a Mount Everest to climb to get back in contention overall.
Welcome back to the Foil Podcast, episode 14. It's a weekly chance for Freddie Carr and Andy Rice to discuss the latest news in sailing. Thanks for joining us, whether you're watching or listening. It's great to have your company, and we welcome your comments and questions. In fact, later in this show, we will be digging into some of your comments and questions, so they do get read, and we will answer them to our best ability. So do join in the discussion. Our handle across all socials is We Are The Foil. Now, I've got plenty to talk about today. Of course, it's the long-awaited South American debut for SailGP this weekend in Rio de Janeiro. We'll tell you everything you need to know about that, and we'll get on to some of your comments and questions. But first, gentlemen, you're both back from Mallorca. How was it?
It was really good fun. An amazing week of training with the TP52s. As I said in my column, there's going to be 13 teams going into the Super Series, all of which I think will assume that they can stand on the podium at the end of the year. So it's going to be a hotly contested year.
Nice.
And I was just 10k down the road, but we never did get to catch up because we're both on long days. I was at the Trofeo Princesa Sofia, probably the biggest Olympic event of the whole season, with 1,100 competitors, 900 boats or boards, all 10 different events, and a lot of new stuff going on there. Really critical part of the season for the Olympic scene.
And when you got back from your training, did you sort of go straight out onto the water again? What have you been doing since the last time we saw you?
Well, I checked in on the patio, had a lot of comments on the patio. The patio looks good after the jet washing, and I've just bought those spiky shoes that you put on the bottom of your trainers when you're mowing the lawn to aerate the lawn. So I've gone from patio to lawn, and that's the big project before I go away again.
All you need is like some drums and a harmonica, and you're a one-man band doing everything at once.
Yeah, the lawn's going to look pretty special, I think, this year. Yeah,
Good.
Very excited.
Okay.
You do not have enough to worry about, do you? What would I buy you for your birthday if that's what you're buying for yourself?
A new scarifier. I need a new scarifier to get the moss up.
Can you drag that out of the back?
Exactly. Yeah, I need a new scarifier.
Well, you didn't bring me back any presents from New York, I was going to say. So, let's talk about the Trofeo Princesa Sofia. Let's talk about who are the standout performances, and did it all work? Was it good?
It was definitely a good event. It was super wacky, as you probably found with your training. I don't know if you had any useful sail testing, because
none.
The breeze was absolutely all over the place. Now, there always pretty much was wind, so there wasn't a lot of sitting around in the cafes, which was just as well, because it was wall-to-wall reggaeton. It was making my ears bleed. But anyway, there was a lot of racing done, although there was quite a lot of waiting around as well, just waiting for the breeze to settle, because they'd set it all up, and then the breeze would suddenly shift 90 degrees and they'd have to set it all up again. And they haven't got those robo marks there like they do for SailGP and some of the other big events. So that's something to think for them to think about in the future. So it takes a long time to coordinate the course. But, the cream tends to rise to the top even in these situations. Matt Wern, who's taken a bit of time out from the Ilka 7 after winning his second gold medal at Paris 2024 a couple of years ago, came right back in at the top. Much to the frustration of Mickey Beckett, the British sailor who had won the last 4 and was looking to make it his 5th in a row. And he started a bit slow. He came on strong at the end, got up to second, and then dropped back a little bit, finished with bronze behind Elliot Hansen.
Yeah, another Brit.
Another Brit.
Brit racing going on there for that spot, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought Olympic sailing had lost Elliot Hansen because he had sort of gone off into the big boat pro scene, but he feels like there's unfinished business there, and it's hard yards going back and doing an Ilka campaign in the Olympics again, having had a sniff of that lovely champagne lifestyle that you live, Freddie. But Elliot's put himself back in the hard seat, and he's got to get past Mickey Beckett, who has been definitely the second best, if not sometimes the best Ilka sailor of the last few years, along with Matt Wern, who won the Ilka 7s. But there was new formats being tried for the first time at a major event. This is going away from the low point scoring aggregate system, sort of eke out slowly, catchy monkey, just be conservative throughout the week. That works to an extent, but the points are a lot more backloaded towards the last couple of days of the regatta, and particularly on the final day. And please don't ask me to describe what this new format is, because
I tried to learn it. I did try and learn it because I'm here. I love the Olympic sailing. I think it represents the core of our sport, where 95% of the pro sailors that I've sailed with throughout my career have all come through Olympic sailing projects at various levels of success. So I tried to learn the new style, Andy, and I'm glad my mum was a maths teacher, because it's complicated, isn't it? And I can see what World Sailing are trying to do. I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to put something on television on the final day of an Olympic regatta where, much like SailGP, more often than not, the first across the line is going to get a gold medal. I know that's not quite the case, but it's a pretty complicated, convoluted way to get to that point. And it doesn't, as a general spectator, I would sit there going, how on earth does this regatta work? I'll look at the 470s, for example. They do 5 fleet races to get split into gold and silver fleets, of which that gives you one result that is non-discardable as you move into the next 7 races, where they try and come up with the top 10. That then gives you your position the top 10 then go into the medal day, going into the final day, and they do 2 medal races where you can't be more than 9 points ahead of your competitor if you're in a medal position, so that gets squashed, and then they do 2 medal races and come out with a medalist. And I listened. What's the name of the chap I sent you, the British sailing
Martine Grael.
Yeah, trying to explain it, and I was just like, you poor thing.
And he did it about as well as he could.
Way better than I've just done it.
No, you did it. You did it really well, actually. But the problem is the two extremes: either just straight series like we've always had, or sudden death first past the post like we have in SailGP, and like we had in the IQ4 windsurfers last time round in Paris, with a lot of controversy for British fans, because Emma Wilson went in with a massive points lead that all gets scrubbed to nothing, and it's just out of the top 3, where do you finish across the line? And in many respects she deserved to win the gold, but in that final race she just didn't perform in that race as well as she could have done, and she ended up with the bronze, and she was absolutely gutted. So those two extremes, first past the post or points across the whole week, really easy to explain. All the formats in between, to try and find this sweet spot between what the sailors want, which is predictable and reliable, and what the media want and fans want, which is final day jeopardy. Finding that intersection is really, really difficult, and wherever you end up with that intersection, it's quite difficult to describe the format in 20 seconds.
And did you find that did it work in Palma? I mean, do people understand it? How close to getting the format right for the Olympics in 2 years' time are they?
In the media, we absolutely hated it. You try, because you just cannot encapsulate it in an Instagram post. It's really difficult to describe it succinctly, and you can't do it much better than what you did it just now.
That's very kind.
I know.
And there's me with my beautiful mind looking at all the numbers, going, I don't understand.
Man, no idea.
The one thing that it does do is you don't have Matt Wern winning with a race to spare. So I remember when we were in Tokyo, when he won his first gold medal, he won on a Wednesday, and Amanda Lulham, the journalist from the Sydney Morning Herald, came in and said, so we need to get a picture of Matt Wern with his gold medal. Oh, no, but there's a medal race on Friday, so 48 hours later there's a medal race, and then he will sail around in that race, and whatever happens, he'll still get his gold medal, and then you'll get your picture on Friday. And Amanda's saying, well, yeah, that's 48 hours from now. The story's gone then.
Yeah, but Amanda needs to chill out and celebrate excellence, in my opinion. I hate it. I'm going to throw it out there right now. I hate it. I liked it up to the point in Sydney 2000 when there was no medal races. I thought that was just fine. Old school sailing, let's say. I didn't dislike where we got to before the board started messing around in the Paris Olympics. So up to Tokyo, traditional double point medal race. Look at other sports. Just look at other sports. like, let's use Tiger Woods or Rory McIlroy, more relevant at the moment, the current Masters champion. If Rory McIlroy was going into the last round of the Masters with a 15-shot lead, you know, Tiger Woods used to have that kind of lead, are the PGA going to turn around and go, sorry, Tiger, you are absolutely world-class and way better than all your competitors. We're going to bring that lead down to 5 shots just so we have a bit of last-round drama? Absolutely not. Celebrate that these athletes are so much better than the competition over a 4-year cycle and a lifetime build it up to it, and let them have that. Do not put this sport in that world of jeopardy. Let them be that much better than everyone else. Do not throw it out to that kind of one win shift after an amazing week and already technically of winning the gold, you lose the lot. I really dislike it.
Do you remember that 8 riders BMX course in Paris?
Yep.
About 90 seconds.
Yep.
They all pile out of the gate. About 4 of them crash on the way down, and then France get gold, silver and bronze. Fantastic for the home crowd. But all of those medals decided in 90 seconds of do or die. And that is the way that the modern Olympics has gone. And I don't like it either, Freddie. No. I think it devalues the medals. And you will know Stephen Park, Sparky.
Yep.
Because
it used to be with Run British Sailing, now runs British Cycling.
Exactly. So he took over British Cycling about 8 years ago, nearly 10 years ago, and we've got fantastic BMX riders in the UK, but British Cycling don't put a lot of funding into BMX because it's just a lottery at the end of it. So there's just no point in investing too much money in something where there's so much riding on a lottery. That's the nature of the modern Olympics. I don't agree with it. I think it's really devalued the gold medal. The difference is that in other sports, if you, I don't know what it's like in BMX. I don't know enough about it, but maybe the gold medal is not the be all and end all of your career because you're doing lots of Red Bull fancy stuff and X Games and all the rest of it. But with sailing, for an Olympic sailor, that is the pinnacle of their career, and to put it all on sudden death at the end, I think is too much to ask.
So we get the idea from both of you that, you know, we don't think it's fair, the way that it relates to other sports is very handy. But what do the sailors think about it? What do the athletes think about it?
It partly depends where they come from. So I'll give you an example. So in the women's kites, Jessie Campman from the Netherlands across the week in Parma won 16 races. Lauriane Nalot from France won 1 race, but on the final day, this is a different format, by the way.
Oh yeah,
but
let's just make it a bit more complicated.
Yes, yeah. So this is not the one that you described. This is what the boards are using. They first and second from the qualifying across the week go in to the final day on equal points. So if either of those riders beats the other or wins the first race, and there are 2 semi-finalists that have come through as well, so there's 4 in the final, but if Lauriane or Jessie won that first race, either of them would take the gold. Guess what? Jessie Campman, after winning 16 races, was beaten in that first race by Lauriane Nalot. And so Lauriane wins the gold, and Lauriane feels a bit naughty, but was sort of.
Did she really allude to that? Did she?
Well, she was giggling about it. You know, she thought it was quite funny. Jessie, I'd already interviewed her the day before and said, "What do you think about this?" And she said, "It is what it is. The same rules for everybody. You know, what will be will be." So she was very calmer about it, you know, but that's partly the world they've grown up in. Yeah. Whereas the boats have come from this very conservative, even points across the week. You can potentially win with a race or sometimes even 2 races to spare if you knock it out of the park. And they coming from that traditional background are really struggling with this new world. And they initially, World Sailing had proposed something 6 months ago that was going to be sudden death in the boat classes, and then suddenly some athletes popped their heads
like SailGP?
Yes, that kind of thing. It was in that direction. Now, we're not going to mention any names because they were quite public at the time, but they don't want their names attached to this. They some of the sailors stuck their head above the parapet, which they don't normally do, and they intervened because they were in a panic about this is where our sport could be going. So then the sailors actually devised this format, which is really messy to describe, but gives away a little bit of final day jeopardy. It does mean that any of the top 10 could still win the gold medal on the final day. But if you're 8th, 9th or 10th, you're going to have an absolutely incredible final day in those 2 races. So there's still protection for the top, a bit like what you said about golf. So it is still a 3-point advantage for Rory McIlroy, but it's not 15-point advantage. But they feel that they've compromised, and they think every time we in the media complain about it, they say, well, you're just going to have to tell a better story. The TV product's got to get better, and we as a sport have got to get better about explaining how this sport works, like Tour de France, which obviously you watch that play out as a soap opera across 3 weeks, and you pretty much know that Pogacar or somebody has won with.
Well, it's not somebody anymore. It is just Pogacar.
It's just Pogacar.
We'll leave the cycling pods to do that.
Yes,
but you know, when it comes to Olympics, because of course this was trying out this format for the Olympics in 2028. From my perspective, the Olympics is where people suddenly become armchair experts about 12 sports they've never watched in their lives, and to actually make it easier for someone to drop in to watch the final race of sailing and BMX and the 100-meter sprint and, you know, whatever, the pole vault and the football. You know, they might not be experts on these sports, but you can understand why editorially they want to make it so that you don't have to have all these explainers. This is the match, this is the race you have to watch. And, you know, the athletes will just have to suck it up. I mean, there is that. You know, the millions of people that could be watching around the world that could be converted to your sport by an amazing final, and they can then find out about the soap opera about the person who should have won gold on Wednesday but didn't get gold in the final. That's a backstory. I can understand why they would do it.
I can understand that. I do understand that. I'd like to know, a stat I don't know is, since medal race format, let's call it the double pointer 10-boat medal race format, has come in, and that came in 2004 in Athens, didn't it? And then it phased out. Am I wrong there? Was it 2008?
Beijing 2008 was the medal race, which is what we've had. That was the first time. And the reason it came in was because the England girls from GBR, Shirley Robertson, Sarah Webb and Sarah Ayton, won with a race to spare. They didn't compete on the last day at Athens.
And that was in Athens?
That was in Athens. They were getting their hair done. The done thing those days was, if you'd already won your gold medal, was you'd sit out the final race because you didn't want to affect the outcome of the silver and the bronze. So they were getting their hair done,
for the
ready
medal
for the medal ceremony
right.
that evening. And that was the point where sailing said, hang on, this has got to change. This is not a great look.
Yep.
So then we got the medal race, which I thought was awful. We've had that for...
Oh, you didn't like the medal race either?
No, I didn't like that. But you know what I'm like, I always moan. I can never
You
come up with a
literally
solution.
moan. You'd win Euro Millions and moan about it.
Oh, yeah.
My point being, I'd love to know the percentage of gold medals that were won before the medal race from 2008 to, let's say, Tokyo 2020. I'd imagine it would be in the single digits of percent. I might be wrong, and that's a number I'm willing to live with to keep the sport authentic.
I would like to see more experimentation. What frustrates me...
Really?
Yes, more formats are so important. We obsess about the boats and the equipment, and we haven't got there with the format. This is not the best format that there could be, and I don't know what that format is yet, but we should be playing with formats more.
What if we already had the best format?
So there is an argument for that. It depends what you're trying to achieve with the Olympics, but like the sailors say, we also need to get better with the TV product, and we need to sell the story of who these athletes are.
Agree with that. I mean, it would make for some pretty spicy telly, wouldn't it, to have won every race for crossing an Olympic regatta and come away without a medal?
As long as people are happy to sort of speak out about it, rather than just hiding behind the parapet.
Is that the reality? Can you win every qualifying race, literally win every qualifying race, and then going into the medal day, this massive lead is brought down to 9 points because we want to make it interesting, and that person does not win a medal? Get real.
In the boat classes, if you had an absolute shocker across those 2 races on the final day, yes, you could fall out of gold medal position, but you could say, well, 2 races, 2 bad performances.
Choked.
1 bad performance, you break the line too early in the 100 metres and you're done. So that's not that unusual. But Jesse Campman and Lauren Nolo, the example I gave, what you've said pretty much happened, because in their format they went in Even Stevens and Lauriane Nolot stole that gold from Jessie Campman. And, that is one of the great injustices. But the funny thing is, Jessie was one of the most laid-back people about it. But whether she would be at the Olympics in LA 2028 is another matter.
We've done a pretty good job of coming up with absolutely no solution there.
Yep, just moaning.
Just moaning.
You didn't get it right.
But I mean, it's in flux, isn't it? The whole Olympic scene around that is in flux.
I'd like to think it's in flux because I don't want to be stuck with another crappy format like we were for 16 years with the last one, which I didn't think worked, and I think we can do better.
You didn't like that. I thought you'd be about that.
Not really. I mean, we could go into some of the specific reasons why not, but we can do that another time probably.
Okay. Yeah, let's hit pause
on a quiet week.
Yeah.
So, and if you've got an opinion about these formats, then of course comment. We welcome those. You mentioned about the start line, false starts and stuff. They've added another hoop for people to jump through with the new system, the Vakaros. Explain. I don't know much about it.
Well, it's an onboard.
Well, you've used it, right? So tell us your experience of it.
Yeah, so it's an onboard computer that is there to give you start line data, make the day much more efficient, and most importantly, like the America's Cup and SailGP, is absolutely definitive whether you're over the line early or not. So that whole OCS world is taken away. This winter I've had a really good experiences on both sides of the fence, where I went to the M32s and raced in Miami, where they had the Vakaros, they had the distance to line and your countdown timer. The ends are pinged for you, so it's an absolute fact where the start line is within the GPS on the race committee boat, and the starting buoy gives you a distance to the start line, and you can do a bunch of trigger pull practice to get your timed runs into the start line. And when the gun hits 0, you'll either get a red light flash up, your OCS, or you get a green light flash up, and you are good to go onto the race course. And it's fact. And if you're OCS in the M32s, you have to slow down, go behind all the other boats, and carry on. And then on the flip side, there was a big debate in the Dragon class this winter about whether we were going to adopt the Vakaros for the Gold Cup. Now, bear in mind, there's quite a, generational gap between the M32 and the Dragon class drivers. So the Dragon class said, let's not use it for the Gold Cup. We'll integrate it later this year. And I've never spent more time on the water with general recalls and postponements and black flag starts where everyone sheets on to go early, but it's such an over the line early that no numbers are getting called out. And we probably wasted an hour to 90 minutes a day in around the fleet's ill discipline on starting procedures. So I think I am a big fan of the Vakaros for day efficiency and absolute clarity of whether you're over the line or not. And in the Olympics, SailGP, America's Cup, in fact, all regattas are important to the people doing it. So that is very important. The one thing that I don't like the Vakaros for, where I hope in stuff like the Olympics they'll remove it, is the distance to the line. So it tells you at the top of your Vakaros you have a countdown timer, and underneath it, it tells you your distance to the line. Now, I know within the system you can take that away, but I think that is a fundamental skill of a racing sailor to get a transit, know your distance to the line, know your trigger pull time, and launch onto the race course from there. But I think it's a very powerful tool for making a day run very efficiency and removing OCS jeopardy. And they used it in the 49ers, is that
49ers.
Right?
So there was a lot of resistance in the Olympic classes to take on this technology. It always is really hard to push through change in the Olympic classes through all the World Sailing Committees. Ben Ramoka, the class manager of the 49er, the FX and the NACRA, really argued the case to get this on board the 49er. And they tried it for the first time in Palma, and as soon as they tried it, I don't think there's any going back. No. And to answer your question or your doubt about whether they should be allowed to ping the line and see distance to line, they're not allowed to do that.
No, but it comes in automatically, doesn't it?
It sits there in the system, but the only thing that the sailors in the 49er are told is green or red.
You're either perfect. So it removes. Yeah, that's good. That's a really good way for them to go with that. So
absolutely,
it still keeps the skill of the trickle to the line, the trigger pull, the transits, the conversation between the crew and the helm. Yeah. Oh, brilliant!
Oh, great.
Which I would. I mean, you're in that world of professional sailing where the navigator does ping the line at both ends.
Oh yeah, the TP52s.
I don't understand why that's allowed, because that's giving over more power to the computer, and you've told us how much you hate propulsion and batteries and everything else.
Yeah.
So what do you think about being allowed to ping the line in a keelboat?
Yeah, so in the TP class last year, they proposed to put the Vakaros on, but it was met with quite a lot of resistance from the navigators, funnily enough, because that's effectively their pre-start job. Although the navigators give very specific information on ley lines and time to burn and trigger numbers and all of that the Vakaros wouldn't be able to do. But it is going to be working in the background this year. And for more than anything, it should be on the boats for the clarity of OCS. Like, the amount of money the owners spend on one race is a lot. So if you get called OCS unjustly, there's a level of frustration. So yeah, I think when we're having this conversation in 2 years' time, the units will have got cheaper and we'll be running in a world of Vakaros or another system.
At this level, I think it's an absolute no-brainer, because $600 for a unit sounds like a lot of money, but when you are paying a coach a similar amount of money each day, let alone the rib that you're hiring for them and your accommodation. Doing a 2.5 week trip to Palma for a 6-day event is about a $10,000 exercise for a 49er crew. So if you divide your 15 races into 10,000, that's $666. So if you just get one race back because of the reasons you said, because you're not mucking around with all these recalls and sometimes losing a whole day of racing because of this, you've paid for your Vakaros unit with one race gained back.
I like that.
Yeah. Very good. So we can move on to America's Cup, right?
Yeah.
There's not been a huge amount of news, although we have Marzio Pirelli as CEO to welcome to the America's Cup partnership. This is big news? Do we like this news?
Yeah, we like this news. Like, the America's Cup partnership is new. It's driving the America's Cup in a direction we haven't seen in the 170 year of the competition. It depowers the Defender, which Team New Zealand have done such an amazing job of defending the Cup. It does need depowering, and he needs to drive this new commercial entity forwards. And I've seen he's from a sports media world. That's probably more prevalent than ever in this oversaturated world of sport and now oversaturated world of sailing, that the America's Cup get that right. And he's from a financial background as well. He's worked with Goldman Sachs and HSBC, and in this world of financial capping within the America's Cup, I'm going to be fascinated to see how he and his team manage that. But he's got some pretty big things to tick off as soon as he gets his feet under the desk.
Yeah. What's first? What does he have to do straight away? I mean, and also, what do we know about him apart from his LinkedIn CV?
Well, he's an Italian trying to make an event work in Italy.
Ah, va bene.
Yeah, when in Rome or Naples. I think that's obviously one thing, and maybe he will help to address some of the frustrations that we're having. That at this stage we only know of one AC40 preliminary event, which is in May in Cagliari, and we hear rumours that there should be other ones coming in this season, and we still don't know if or when these are happening.
Big gap.
So I understand that local councils in issues in Naples and red tape and bureaucracy and all that stuff is standing in the way. But, if there are any aspirations like we're hearing that the America's Cup is going to become more commercially viable, then seriously, we need to know if there is an event happening in June. We're talking in April.
Yeah.
When are these other events happening? How do you organise yourself for that?
It's really hard to be a fan of an America's Cup team and not have your season laid out ahead of you, isn't it? I mean, we're right there. We're in the pre-season friendly stage. There's an event in 44 days, and then what? And what does it count for? Like, I'm really excited about the America's Cup, not necessarily for the class of boats. And as I've previously said, I'm really excited about the youth coming through. And we're seeing that across all of the teams, getting this younger generation in and retiring old bods like me. It's brilliant. But give us something else. Like, where is the calendar? Where's the format? What does the Road to Naples regattas count for? How is the qualifying series going to look? I have all of these questions that I want to start writing about and talking about, but there's nothing out there. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, maybe this is the problem of the new democratic system. I don't know. Maybe there's still too many arguments between the different stakeholders that we have with this new ACP setup, but we don't actually know.
No. And we are sort of a week past the deadline of these 2 new teams having entered or not entered, who knows. I'd love to hear something about that. Please, we want to really talk about it and build this event, so please give us something.
Whoa, lads in the studio, chill out. This is future Freddie here down on Emsworth seafront, and stop your whinging about the America's Cup with some breaking news. This is really good news. American Racing Challenger Team USA is in. Representing Sail Newport, the team has been confirmed as a challenger for the Louis Vuitton 38th America's Cup, and it is a huge moment for American sailing on the global stage. It's the vision of entrepreneurs Carol Komarech, Chris Welsh, with the leadership handed to the most respected sailing figure in America, Ken Reed. A 2-time Rolex Yachtsman of the Year, Reed brings serious pedigree to the campaign, aiming to restore a US dominance. But make no mistakes, the United States is the America's Cup. It first won it back in 1851 and held it for 132 years, the longest winning streak in international sport. Without this entry, 2027 America's Cup would have been the first entry without an America's team in that illustrious sporting history. But that changes now. That changes today. And they're serious. Things have got really serious straight off the bat. The team has acquired key assets from American Magic, including the AC-75 Patriot and the 2 AC-40 platform. This gives them a turnkey operation to hit the ground running. This is not a slow build. The team is arriving ready to race. But it's not just about the Cup. They're going to be working alongside US Sailing. The team is going to be focused on building the future, supporting youth pathways and expanding opportunities for female sailors. So now that's another entry into the 38th America's Cup, and the excitement is beginning to build. The Cup is taking place in Naples next year, the first time Italy has ever hosted the event. And now with American Racing Challenger Team USA officially in the fight, the Cup has one of the biggest storylines back. Right. That's it, pod interrupted, from Emsworth seafront, back up to the Tower of London, back to the boys in the studio.
So Marzio's got a big job on his hands, basically, but at least, they've got an Italian, so he can speak to the locals that need
absolutely essential
persuading.
Yeah. I mean, Naples, if anywhere, I mean, I think Italy's always going to be difficult for an outsider to work in, but then Naples is another level. So having an insider like that has got to help.
Yeah, a good appointment, and wow, he has a lot of opportunity to take an amazing sporting event and make it loads better again. Good luck to him.
Yeah, Marzio, if you're watching, good luck. We've got plenty of advice.
Or not.
Yeah. Okay, so we're hurtling towards event 4 of SailGP. And you're going to be on your way there very shortly, aren't you?
That's right. Palmer barely done, but repack the bag. Just about enough time to dry the washing out on the line. Haven't managed to do the scarifying or even mowing.
Well,
the
if
lawn.
you need a hand with the lawn, I can come round and do it. I'm pretty good.
Yes.
And do you fold up your bike and take it with you as well, or do you get a new bike when you get there?
A new bike this time. Yeah. I mean, Rio. It's quite a challenging place to go to. I've been there a few times. You've got to keep your wits about you in Rio, but I'm really looking forward to it. And the funny thing is that Brazil was going mad for SailGP even before they knew there was a Brazilian team. And I haven't quite got to the bottom of why that is, but they just seem to be sports mad. But also sailing has been one of the best sports in Olympic terms for Brazil. So maybe it's a bit of that as well.
Yeah, do you reckon it's a 2016 is building on that?
That's certainly going to help. I mean, it's really exciting to hear how G'd up the Brazilians are, and I think that's going to be maybe one of the really fascinating factors that we're going to see in Brazil, where we know how mad for sailing Italy is and New Zealand is. We don't know so much about Brazil. We don't have such a vision of that. But I spoke to Alan Adler, who is the team boss of the Brazilian SailGP team, past Olympic sailor in his own right, went to the games twice for Brazil, and then he's had a phenomenal career where he's moved from being an athlete into event management. From Volvo Ocean Race, putting a Brazilian team together for that. And then when Formula One actually went away from Brazil for a while, he was instrumental in bringing it back to Sao Paulo and is still very much running that event today. And most recently, not entirely successfully, brought MotoGP to Brazil. Wasn't his fault about the sinkhole opening up, which you were telling me about. So... And he's brought Police, the rock band, 74,000 people to watch the Police in the Maracana Stadium, and Cirque du Soleil. So he's anything that moves in terms of event management in Brazil. Alan Adler is the guy, and he is our man in Brazilian SailGP. So with all his experience across that, I wanted to ask Alan, where does he think SailGP is going? What is the future for this?
What about the progress of the Brazilian team? Because when you put the team together, you brought some real rock stars in, and I don't know if it's correct to say, but Andy Maloney seemed like the first big bucks purchase in the first time we'd seen a sort of a big transfer, and presumably you paid quite a lot of money to bring Andy Maloney across from New Zealand to power up the Brazilian team in season one, and then Andy Maloney disappears to Sweden, and you've got to do a bit of a rebuild. And then because of a family bereavement, and then also a birth for Paul Goodison becoming a dad for the second time, you've got to bring all these people in for Sydney. And then you have an amazing event in Sydney. So there's been a lot of movement for Team Brazil, a lot for Martine Grael to deal with. How do you think it's stacking up, and how are they looking going into Brazil?
Yeah, so I think the first challenge we face as a new team, so when you are a new team in the league, your chances of win are smaller. And what we see now, with the prize money being a real significant for the sailors, is that happens that some guys, they want to be in a more competitive team to be able to make more bucks, right? Which is understandable, and we have to deal with that as a new team, and we have to have more long-term commitments so we can be able to develop and to train as a team. So those are things that we are learning, to be in a new league. For everyone is learning that, that there was not a license before, so now you have to have a license to be able to step into the 50. You have to have a license. And if you have an athlete and someone wants your athlete, either you loan or you have to sell to do the transfer, So things are being more and more professional and regulated, which is good, which will help and benefit those kinds, to avoid those kinds of things that you lose key people from one season to the other. And but I think those kinds of things we have to deal. And to tell the truth, Sydney was our second best event until now. We have a fourth place in New York before, and now we had a P7 in Sydney where was good, in terms of the team getting together. And we brought a new guy from the Team USA, Jeremy, at the wing, and he works really well. And I think we're gonna keep the same team for Brazil. We're gonna keep the same team. We're gonna bring Jeremy. We're gonna have Paul back, as strategy. So I think we are quite excited about Rio. It worked well in Sydney because you remember when we brought in Pietro as a wing trimmer, and he was our coach. We knew that he would need some development time to be able to be more efficient on the wing. So this is happening. This is happening. We saw Jeremy. He had more time in the boat. He had a season behind him, so he had more time in the boat. It's very important in their 50s.
And with all the pressure and the excitement of a home event, do you expect that to boost Brazilian performance or to take away?
That's another very good question. You know, I remember in February we had the Rio Open, the tennis event, and we had our Brazilian player João Fonseca, which is an amazing player who follows tennis. He knows he just lost to Sinner in Indian Wells in 2 tie breaks. You know, he could have won Sinner easily, but he was at home, so the whole pressure was on him, and it's not easy to perform under such a pressure. I think I think it took many years for Federer to win a home event in Basel. So let's see how Martine. I think I will tell you after the event. I don't know exactly. I think Martine, she has done that before. She won the gold medal in Rio. So she's used to the pressure. So I think she's prepared. And I hope she used that in favor and not against her.
And that gold medal didn't come easy, did it? It all came down to that battle with the New Zealand FX team for Martine and Cayena Kunz, and they survived the pressure to win that gold medal on home waters. And I'm thinking that's only got to help Martine.
Yeah, she knows the place very well. She's used to sail there for a long time. I think the F50, of course, in the 49ers, she was fast. She controlled and dominated the boat. You know, in the F50, she has a disadvantage because she don't have the time in the boat. But I hope we can use the local knowledge to compensate that lack of training she has in the F50.
Fascinating chat there, Andy. Well done. And of course, don't forget, Andy will be on the ground in Rio, so you can watch all of the content, keep up to date on thefoil.com with everything that's happening for real at SailGP this weekend. Yeah, very, very interesting. And talking about Martine Grael as well.
Yeah, so I spoke to Martine as well. Now, she is so busy. She's absolutely overwhelmed in the lead up to this. The demands on her time are enormous. I was really lucky to get her. Fortunately, didn't get her on video, got her on audio. And I asked her about her expectations, about whether she thinks she can thrive with all this additional attention and pressure, or whether it's going to be a problem for her.
You had a great Sydney with some difficult circumstances with change of crew, etc. So how do you feel team-wise going into Rio?
A little bit better, but since our change in Sydney, we decided to maintain the same wing trimmer for Rio because the conditions are expected to be on the light side. We don't know it till it's there now, the forecast. But yeah, so we are coming equipped to Rio. Pietro is also coming, and also, I think he is also gonna do a lot of learning. It's gonna be a pretty different situation than Sydney for us for sure.
So Jeremy Wilmot on wing trim.
Yeah.
Paul Goodison back on for strategist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yeah, but 7th in Sydney was obviously a really good performance. The end of last season, losing some key players to other teams must have been difficult. How do you deal with that? This is always going to happen in SailGP, isn't it, with transfers?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at it at all the sides. I think changes are always also moments of great learning. So you can say we lost like 2 very big assets, and then we can say also that we've taken a lot of learning on the team and new people in means that like we're learning another skill, other skills and stuff. And I always take in the learning side. I think it's always positive to have learning from different people, and I think I don't know. For the long run, I'm actually quite positive, and the short it's really really hard on our team, and especially considering the start of the season with a lot of breaks, and it was quite challenging.
Yeah, it's been a season of big extremes so far, hasn't it? Have there been any moments where you've questioned, what am I doing here? I didn't know I got into such a dangerous sport when I started sailing Optimists or whatever it was all those years ago.
No,
Never a moment.
No, there's always the questioning is what is the until when, into what like for example in Sydney, into what I'm comfortable with, with this new team, new wing trimmer, not having Goody there, and then so I've set myself a few goals. If it's like this, I will not do it. And I've talked to my team before, and I think there's always a certain conditions that you have to be sure that you have the safety. But then other than that, it's pretty okay. I mean, we know we're the risk we are involved in. We understand, like, especially with the recent events, you do understand that. But it's fear. It's really bad. I don't feel like it's the right way to go. It's understanding the potentials and when is there you're closer to it or further away from it.
So
Say in training in Perth, we had a few close calls in one close call in training, and I was not happy. I was the whole day. I was a little bit. What do we do for this not to happen again?
Can you tell me what happened?
We reached the rake limiter, and it was training, and we had a boat to lure it on the upwind. Luckily, they saw it and they were able to. I think it was fine, but I was just thinking if they were not able to move, what would it have been?
That was sideways slip. You lost sideways control?
But it was downwind, so it was much in control than when you have it in the reaching. And it was so small compared to what happened in New Zealand. It's so small, but still you feel so like don't want this to happen. What do we do to prevent this from happening? So it's we always thinking about it, although we're not worrying too much about it.
Yeah, this is the thing. I mean, what you're saying is you can't afford to feel the fear when you're there, but when you get back ashore in a debrief, you've got to address how you avoid that the next time.
Yeah, you gotta address every single possible thing you can possibly make, and then there's always the on the moment. It's not just the side slips. I think there's a lot of crossing in SailGP, and you see that it's very possible for someone to miss something. Watching past races, you see a lot of close calls, and even from like previous seasons where we're not there. So then it's important to have your team, depending on the conditions, not just the tactician or the driver, but everybody.
Just to give you an example, with Goody missing from Sydney, if Sydney had been super windy like Perth and Auckland, are you saying that you may not have raced in Sydney?
Exactly.
And what do you say to the league if that happens?
I don't know.
But
But there's got to be. It's just like an airplane pilot. If he thinks the ship is not in conditions to take off, is he gonna still go on it because the company is pressuring because there is 400 passengers waiting to get to their destination and they're gonna have to have refund and stuff, or you gonna say no, this is not correct. I'm staying. So it's kind of that.
I understand that. That's very interesting. With Rio, I mean, you're expecting Rio to be light. If Rio is super windy, you cannot stay ashore for your home event, can you?
No. But I think, that was before knowing Jeremy and before having not Goody there. We had obviously other good sailors, but it's hard when you're not used to them sailing. And after Sydney, it was fine.
Yeah. Well, you haven't fully tested them in strong winds because you didn't get that opportunity, but you have the confidence.
We stay with Pietro if it's strong.
So it feels like the pressure is on her, not just in a sporting way, but also from the organisers of the event and the the very vocal fans locally, right?
Yeah, but then again, she's been through all this before. 10 years ago, it was, it was more than a two-way battle. It was a four-way battle in the 49er FX, and it was a who-beat-who scenario, Freddie. It was one of those rare situations where I have to admit the medal race was working quite well, or at least it sort of got the hell out of the way, and it was just a straight fight of who beat who. And then on the last lap, it was a split between the New Zealanders. It was Alex Maloney and Andy Maloney's sister, who was skippering the Kiwi boat with Molly Meach going one way, and it was Martine Grael and Kaina Kunz going the other way. And even Martine and Kaina, being the locals, didn't really know which side was paying, but they had to go with the split. And when they came back together again, Brazil was ahead. They won that gold medal, and the rest is history. So they've lived up to that pressure. They've thrived in that kind of environment, and that must give Martine a lot of confidence this time round.
Absolutely, yeah.
So when we look at, obviously this is the first time, it's the debut for SailGP in South America. We should have had an event in Rio last year. So there's a lot of eyeballs on this. But we know the racetrack. We know because of the Olympics 10 years ago. And a lot of the sailors will know this racetrack. So let's talk about what the racetrack itself offers up, because of the topography of Sugarloaf Mountain and the tides, but also the sort of the depth of sailing talent that has experience of these waters from 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think there's 14 medalists within the SailGP family that featured a decade ago.
Wow.
And we're returning to an Olympic racetrack, aren't we? I know that Sydney was an Olympic racetrack, but there's nobody who was involved in Sydney that is featuring SailGP sailing. We know that the Ainsleys, the franchise owners, are around still, but returning to Rio as a Olympic racetrack and a SailGP racetrack, that's obviously the focus of that conversation, and we're racing on the medal racecourse. And I loved that medal racecourse from 10 years ago. I thought it brought about some amazing stories with Santiago Langer winning in his NACRA at the age of beyond 60, having fought lung cancer.
He wasn't quite that.
Was not quite that.
No, he was 54 when he got there. It's still amazing for such an athletic boat.
There you go.
And one lung lost the previous year because of cancer.
And then there's the Martine Grael. There's so many stories that came out of that Olympic cycle, and it was
Giles Scott
winning in the way he did. Nathan and Goobs getting the silver. Pete and Blair getting the gold. Hannah Mill. I like so many names. I mean, we look into the coaches' booth. We got Tom Burton, who won the gold in the laser, and Sam Meach, who got the bronze in the laser, who are currently sitting in coaching booths for Italy and Sweden. And again, I think that the coaches are going to become more prevalent in SailGP, and to have a couple of Olympic medalists who have got medals on that race course in your ear to talk you through the really tricky race course of Rio, particularly if it's light, will be a very powerful thing.
And is it looking like it's going to be light? I get the vibe it is.
It is. That's
So
not
it's
that
another
unexpected.
like Sydney again.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Sydney is an interesting one to look at as a sort of a case study, because I know that when we were there, some of the sailors were, even Martine was saying, this is not dissimilar to what we might expect to get in Rio. So
she's bob on. Looking at the long range forecast, and this is an area that you would know better because you covered the games there. I don't know that well, but here we are 4 days out from racing, and it's looking light on Saturday and somehow lighter on Sunday. So a real repeat of Sydney. We're looking right now at like 4 to 6 to 7 on the Saturday, and Sunday, like at the moment, it's an absolute drift off.
And it's tidal there as well. So this could be one of the most current driven courses that we see across the whole of SailGP. And so that knowledge from 10 years ago is going to be absolutely critical. And what you say about the guys in the booth with that Rio experience, I think they're going to be listening very hard to them. And if they've got any overhead views from watching any of the racing, and you can see those tide lines, they're very clear in the water. It's really brown water, but
it's brown water hitting ocean water from memory, isn't it? And you get like a real line of where there's something going on, and I don't know what it is, but you could go, right, on one side it's going to be doing that, on the other side it's going to be doing that. So we're in H2 here, we're only doing 6 knots, so if we go and get a bit of tidal relief for 2 knots, that's a chunk of percentage to move up the ladder, and we could be into that look is my suspicion. Tide and current will be a big conversation if it is non-foiling conditions.
Wow. There was a lot of debris in the water in the build-up to the Rio Games as well, and there was some nasties in the water that were making people very sick. Ooh. Now, if it's light and it's not too splashy, that shouldn't be a problem. And hopefully the racecourse is small enough that if there is a debris issue, then SailGP will clear the worst of that out. But when it rains and all the stuff flows out of the favelas and the surrounding area, you can have some pretty horrible stuff sitting around in the water, which even for a laser travelling at 4 knots, you don't really want, but you certainly don't want with an F50 with those foils in the water. So we have to hope that there's a good clear out of the racecourse as well.
Oof. In terms of what it's going to look like, the topography looks amazing. You've got the Christ Redeemer, you've got Sugarloaf Mountain. How does that affect the way that the wind, if there is any wind, the way that the wind works? How do you judge the wind incoming?
Yeah, so in a sea breeze direction, and let's hope that there is enough thermal activity to get a sea breeze on top of a gradient and sort of generate a bit of flow. From memory, there's on Flamingo Beach, which is where the racecourse is going to be situated off. There's an airport down at the bottom of that beach, and you can get a bit of compression there. So you can get a bit more breeze on the land side that you'd see a lot in a lot of topography with that setup. And there's also just off Sugarloaf Mountain, there's
Island.
There's an island, isn't there? That the current goes round and the wind goes round. And that could be kind of top reach kind of world, couldn't it? And just having your head, not Shark Island from this time round in Sydney, but Shark Island a few years ago. The wind is going to be bending around Sugarloaf, around that island, compression on the shore, current ripping off that cone island. It's going to be a very, very tricky racecourse. And other than New York, it's probably got the biggest bits of stuff.
Yeah.
In New York, it's skyscrapers. In here, it's massive hills for the wind to get its way around. So what does that look like for the sailors? I would say a world of snakes and ladders and a very high pressure, high stress weekend where there's some teams that can't afford another slip up.
Yeah, let's talk, because we're only 3 events in, but there's quite a few names in the lower half of the standings that need to do better. Obviously, we can't really talk about the black foils because the Kiwis haven't really been on the water very much. But so you think it's that critical this early in the season? I
do. It's quite crude to draw a line through the middle of the scoreboard and go top half, bottom half. But if you look at where Artemis are on 15 points and everybody above them, I think they will go, particularly the Brits and the Aussies and the Spanish and the French, who are kind of in and around there as well, having only sailed 2 out the 3 events. Mm-hmm. They've had a great start, as have the Americans, obviously, and they're probably looking at this forecast going, lovely jubbly.
Yeah.
We took the last one out in H2 conditions. Let's consolidate on our start. But getting below that halfway line mark, you're dropping into the teams on 11 points and less, and you'd start with Phil Robertson and the Italians. The Danish, the Germans, North Star, Brazil, Black Foils put to one side, and Switzerland. Now, the North Star on 6 points, Brazil on 5 points, Black Foils on 2 points, obviously, and Switzerland on 1 point. The one thing with SailGP this season, if you finish 11th, 12th or 13th, which the Black Foils will this week, you get no points. No points. You go all the way to South America and come home with nothing. Now, I would suggest, this is quite a bold statement for the 4th event of the season, if you're in the bottom half of that leaderboard and you pick up no points from Brazil, you have got heaps on to make the grand final already. Like you have, if you are a North Star, a Germany, a Switzerland, you have got to be scoring some points now. And you're going to be pushing off the dock or off the mooring in really light and fickle conditions.
I'm sure you were saying at the start of the season that there were at least 8, if not 10 teams with a serious prospect of making
of winning.
That went in there believing that they could.
Yeah.
And I partially agree with you. I mean, I wasn't as punchy as that, I don't think. But, Canada, after their great period last year, this time last year in the Americas, they really need to call on the spirit of Giles Scott and winning that gold medal in the Finn, that he will need to draw on all of those great memories from 10 years ago and come out firing, because they redeemed themselves in the last race of Sydney, which was the best way they could leave after what was an awful weekend for them.
Yeah, when the last time Giles got on the plane to Rio, I've never seen a man more confident, more prepared to go and deliver a result ever. I was with him at Land Rover BAR at the time, and he'd just gone through a ridiculous run of Finn results. I think he won every regatta for 4 years or something like that. His homework around the Brazil racecourse was second to none, and he needs to suck it in, getting on the plane to Rio this time round, get himself in that mindset, collectively bring his team up to that level that he operates at, and he's got to execute this weekend and get some serious points on the board.
Yeah, because they're in 10th. North Star Canada in 10th at the moment, just behind Germany and ahead of Mubadala Brazil. So if it is going to be quite similar racing conditions to Sydney, is there anything we can learn from the data in Sydney that that they can dig into, as well as going in with swagger because you've won gold there before, but actually what can we learn from Sydney?
So I haven't done a data dive. I know Andy's done a data dive, but I mean, painfully for me, because we all know my thoughts on the Sydney racing. I watched back a lot of the Sydney racing over the last few days with my coach's head on. Right. So we're going to go into a light wind weekend. What can we learn around this? So I focused specifically on the starts. And on the Saturday in Sydney, there was 4 to 7 knots. It was H2 to H1 and then actually foiling a little bit. But in the starts, a formula that worked, and this is going to sound so basic, the teams that ignored the bias and just purely ignored the boat-on-boat interactions to fight for the king spot that's shown with the blue arrows on the TV broadcast, and purely focused on their trigger pull and being the fastest boat when the gun went, were top 4 at Mark 1. So in that 4 to 8 knots, when you go H2, H1, and then potentially foiling, if you started the bottom step of that ladder slightly higher than everyone else, the next thing came quicker, the next thing came quicker. And that's really easy to say and really obvious to say, of course you want to be fast at start time, but you can get distracted and go, oh, we've got to win the committee boat or got to win the pin. But then in doing that, you get in such a traffic jam, you can't actually trigger pull. So that was on the slightly windier day that we saw in Sydney. I think we'll see a little bit of that on the Saturday in Rio. And then on the Sunday, it was H2 in Sydney, and it's going to be H2 in Rio. I think it could all change. I hope it does. And the difference from that starting in H2 was with 30 seconds to go, the teams that did well really worked hard to open up the gap to leeward of them. So they gave themselves the ability to do the big bow down with 10 seconds to go. And they actively avoided other boats and just gave themselves breathing room to get this F50 rumbling, So it wasn't necessarily about speed at gun. It was about the gap to leeward of you to pirouette and get onto that reach. I mean, that, like I said, that was my gut feeling from just re-watching the starts back.
If only they had a propeller to get them up and forward.
Don't.
I can feel you coming to the dark side, Neil. That's good. That's what I like to hear.
Don't start.
Well, interestingly, on the starting stats for the Sunday, which I think is the more relevant day for what we're expecting in Rio, guess who? It was a USA who were the fastest boat at the start, right. Averaging 15k, so not great speeds and really to be expected, but 15k ahead of Denmark, who was second with 13.8, and Denmark doing pretty well in a lot of these stats. Time to cross start, USA were actually in the middle, so it didn't matter too much that they were a little bit later than others. Italy was the closest time to cross start, just 0.6, so really impressive by Italy in terms of how close they were to the line. Mean distance to the line, Brazil were actually the closest. USA were second, so also one of the closest to start. And then USA, in terms of mean position at Mark 1, they were first at Mark 1 with 2.8. And if we're going to talk about positions at Mark 1, then number of overtakes. Any thoughts about who was the best at overtaking, Freddie?
I stopped watching the racing back after the starts, to be honest.
It was Spain.
Okay.
Biggest overtakers with 9 overtakes on the Sunday across all the races.
And they made the final, didn't they? It was them, America and Great Britain.
That's right.
Yeah. They did look slippery, didn't they? to be fair.
Yeah, they did. I thought they looked really fast all weekend, and particularly on that Saturday. We talked about this before in terms of marginal foiling. The Spanish were looking like they had a slightly earlier gear for getting on both foils. And USA, because they were so good at Mark 1, only needed to do one overtake to win that event.
Wow.
I love those stats, but just wind it back to your eye test. Go and watch some of the Sydney Sunday starts again, and all of that good stuff from the USA was created with 30 seconds to go. And that's where the stats can't tell the story.
Yeah.
They do a really good job of manipulating their position to give them that room to trigger pull. So, yeah, the stats do tell a story, but if you go and wind the start back, that's where they excelled. They really did a nice job on their turn back point and picking the boats to attack and getting that gap and going.
I remember what Nathan Outridge said was that with Artemis, they pretty much lost a start through not getting their act together, coming off the back of maybe a slow finish in the previous race. And actually the race begins as soon as you cross the finish line of the previous race. And with your coach boat, you've got to get a tow into the place where you want to be, and you've got to watch out for the other tow boats that are blocking you from putting your boat where you want to go. So we got to watch out a little bit for a little bit of blockage.
Towboat wars.
Yeah, tug wars.
And it's got a propeller for you to get excited
There
about.
you are.
I get why you love it
You
now.
can't get away from it.
Oh,
We're
brilliant.
already in that world. You didn't realise, Freddie.
No, that's great.
But that's a really good point, isn't it? Because, you know, as I think it was Dylan Fletcher in an earlier episode, it was about you only have to do loads of overtakes if you have a really bad start. So the overtake stat is kind of meaningless. But if you have a really bad race and you're coming in 11th or 12th, and then you have to make your way, because it's like 7 minutes from the end of one race to the start of the next. So, you know, that's a really, you know, valid point, that it's not just about having a good, you know, getting in the top 4 or 5 to get the points. It's about getting well positioned to start the next race.
And I'll throw out there, and I was critical of the race, wasn't I? Race 7, as I build as in Sydney, is
The 4-minute race.
the 4-minute race, and I was really critical of that, and I actually got quite a bit of feedback from the athletes about it.
Feedback?
They were like, Freddie, chill out, mate, it is what it is. And I take that on board, but I do think race 7 in Sydney was the biggest race of the season, where the Australians had the opportunity to try and match the Brits and keep that top dream fighting and all that kind of stuff, and it was a big race. And I wonder whether SailGP management will have taken lessons from Sydney in terms of their scheduling and formatting and broadcast window, and just potentially allow themselves the programme to breathe a bit more and make the race a little longer, or move the racing schedule around to try and fit into what I think could be tricky conditions. We'll see.
And if it's light, we're expecting, you know, full fleets, no split fleets.
I would assume so, yeah.
Yeah, that seems to make sense.
Yeah.
Having said which, the sailors also don't like those H2 races, well, where most of the fleet is H2, but the leader hops up onto the foils like we saw in Geneva and then ends up lapping the whole fleet. I quite enjoy that mess, but the sailors certainly don't, and I can see that Freddie doesn't.
Isn't it weird how I think this guy was hired to be like the old school Scrooge that was going to say, I want to be old school and all of this, and I was hired to be the young cool guy, which
You've
I'm
ended
not,
up being
and we've flipped.
Yeah.
You're trying to be cool and I'm set in my ways.
I love all that stuff. I love will they, won't they foiling stuff,
Yeah.
and some people say it's an absolute joke. If the whole fleet isn't foiling, it's not a proper race. I don't go with that at all. I love that marginal stuff.
Yeah, the marginal stuff is fun, but lapping people.
Yeah, it's a bit hard for the sailors to take, but anyway.
So I'm going to do it. I'm going to ask you for your predictions. I need to know who you think, well, needs to, but also who will do well this weekend.
Well, need to is the bottom 6 that I mentioned, and if I'll stand by my comment, if you're in that bottom 6 and you come away as one of the 2 teams that will score 0 points, I think you're having one. You're absolutely having one, and you have got a Mount Everest to climb to get back in contention overall. Not to say it won't happen,
Got a
but
sugar loaf to climb. Yeah.
sugar loaf to climb. Neil, how good's that? And then who do I think? Hey, man, let's say it. America.
Yeah.
America.
Beat me to it. That's who I think's going to do.
Isn't
well
that
again.
wild that
Yeah.
we're saying that?
Yeah.
Like they are H2 experts in the Middle East last year. They won the last H2 event. It's going to be an H2 event. They are buzzing. So America, Taylor Canfield.
And Brazil's going to have a good one. They had a good one in Sydney, and Brazil we'll have a good one in Brazil.
Yep, and then I'm going to say Meach, the bronze medalist from Rio, coaching Artemis with his eyes in the sky. I think he'll be influential. Tom Burton, who is in the ears of Red Bull Italy and Phil Robertson. I think this is going to be so hard for the sailors on the water to see what the hell is happening on the racetrack, that the coaches will have more of an input on this tidal race course than any other venue we've seen so far.
And outside assistance, to my knowledge, this is the only part of sailing where outside assistance is permitted. And with the topography, if you've got people up on Sugarloaf looking down, that could help. But also you've got the vision of the TV cameras, and I think that's really going to help them with those tide lines here.
Yeah.
And what about, despite the fact that they're in our top 6, Contin de la Pierre and France? I mean, they haven't been on the water. They haven't had a chance to compete. What's the...
Well, they got that man Lenny back, haven't they? Glenn Ashby. I gave him his flowers last week, America's Cup Hall of Fame. We've been bigging him up with the Bonds Flying Ruse. Leigh McMillan is injured, who had transferred from the British America's Cup team and the Brazil SailGP team. He's done the big switch and gone all in on France, and he is now with the French America's Cup team and with the French SailGP team. Now, we didn't talk about it at the time, although we saw Leigh straight after the crash in Auckland, and his shoulder did not look great. Now, what he experienced was a boat doing 90 kilometres an hour, holding onto a wing sheet, coming to a dead stop. And I think the wing trimmers on that first reach are the most exposed people on the boat, because everybody else is in a position where they can hunker down. Mm-hmm. For the wing trimmer to operate the wing effectively and cool the breeze in, they're effectively hiking and hanging over the side of the boat with their feet hooked under a couple of seats or straps, like really exposed. And when they crashed, he kind of wrenched his shoulder and has torn a lot of stuff in his shoulder, had to go and have surgery, and could actually take longer than Louis Sinclair to get back onto a boat. That's how severe the shoulder injury is. And to say I'm gutted for him is an understatement. To see him in Perth coming off the water after those amazing starts the French had, he was beaming from ear to ear, wasn't he, Andy? You could see he'd had a new lease of life within this French setup. And for it to shut down so quickly in 2026, I'm gutted for the chap.
Yeah, absolutely awful. And he wasn't really talked about at the time on that weekend. He wasn't the standout injury.
He wasn't off in an ambulance, like the other two unfortunately were. But it turns out his injury, arguably, right now is going to be the most long-term.
Yeah. So Glennie gets called back in, and now Glennie's opportunity to prove once again that he is the GOAT.
Hang on. Yeah. If Glenn Ashby joins the French and they get in the finals, I mean, what are we saying? Yeah. Oh, my
crazy.
Goodness.
Crazy. Russell's going to hate it. The old man does it again.
Yeah, right.
The 48-year-old or whatever he is. But yeah, Glennie's still the man in demand. But who's feeding the cows back home? That's my concern.
Yeah.
That's another job for you. You need the spikes on your boots, the lawnmower, the whatever it is hanging out, Scarifier, and something to feed the cows.
Lenny's cows in Melbourne, or wherever they are.
His farm is quite big, and I wouldn't want to walk around it.
Not even with your scarifying boots.
Exactly.
Scarifying boots. But we want to see the French do well and come back well, with or without Lenny on the boat.
There's plenty of people I want to see do well as well, but this is the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cliche to say that they need the strong breeze to do well. I don't really know if that's true or not, but I don't put France at the top of the pile. Like you, I do actually put USA at the top of the pile. And what a great comeback story for them over the last year.
And I just wonder whether we won't talk about the British, Emirates, Great Britain all weekend, and they'll make the final and come second, like we did in Sydney. Hardly gave them anything in Sydney. Didn't talk about them at all, and then it was like, oh, they're in the final. Yeah. Oh, they've come second. Oh, they've got 28 points out of 30 and leading the season.
And that's exactly the story that Dylan Fletcher wants us to tell. He just wants to get round mark 1 in 5th place. That's the way they're approaching the starts. Probably a little bit like what you're saying, not going for the absolute kingpin spot on the line with the best bias, because there's 5 other boats fighting for that spot. And not doing what the French are doing. And the French are really radical with their starts, as we've seen. And Dylan doesn't want any of that. He wants to be boring. He wants to be invisible in the starts.
He's nailing that. I'm joking, Deals. Sorry, mate.
And not
He's
to,
very interesting.
Not to underestimate Hannah Mills on that boat as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, they are the best double act at the back of these boats right
How
now.
good is it, lads? Like, we've had a good few weeks off from Sydney. Sydney wasn't a belter, but we start talking about SailGP without any questions or a script, and we're just yarning on. But that just goes to show that even with like wind forecast, the underlying currents and stories, it's all on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hannah Mills, a gold medalist in Rio. Dylan Fletcher
He's
just
still going, look. I tried to stop it there, but he's going.
Yeah. I could go on.
Oh, please.
Yeah, gold medalist in Rio, and got to do it again in the same place. You know, and you can't underestimate how meaningful that is as a human being, as an athlete, to have succeeded on that field of play before.
Absolutely.
It must count for something. But then there's a lot of them that have, so it's
There's
no
a
advantage.
reason they're in this fleet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've covered everything, and you're going to be there. You're not going to be there.
I'm sailing again. My summer with the foil is going and racing and reporting, and I hold them in equal esteem. I feel very lucky to keep racing, and I hope me racing and staying on the front line of Grand Prix yachting helps me tell a few stories to the foil as well. But yeah, I am going to be watching as a fan for sure.
Lovely. But you'll be there. So if you want to see Andy's reports from across the weekend, always getting under the skin of the sport, and also exclusive interviews with athletes that we wouldn't otherwise necessarily see, So all on thefoil.com, and of course across all our socials, we are The Foil. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Freddie. Have a great weekend. I'm jealous because I love Rio. Rio is a great city. So make sure you watch, and we'll be back to discuss it all, pick the bones out of SailGP and everything else when you come back for the Foil podcast next week. Thanks for watching and listening, and see you next week.